Hello! Welcome back to our Rich Artist Fridays. I'm really happy that you guys are here. Thank you for coming back every Friday. It's so good to start seeing familiar faces. It makes me really grateful that you guys feel like you're getting a takeaway from all of these topics that we are touching on. Hopefully, I know most of my people in the US, you're starting off your Friday with these classes, which was kind of the intent. That I know, at least for me, I always get a little bit of this lull towards the end of the week, that maybe this can be a little bit of like an energy refresher for you guys, or just, if anything, 30 minutes where you guys can just tune in, get a little bit of input, get your mind going on these subjects that I know we all deal with. And speaking of subjects we all deal with, that's why I wanted to talk about this today, creative burnout. I know we've touched on it before, but I thought it was important for us to take a considerate amount of time to just sit down and take a look at it, because I know that most of us have experienced it to like one degree or another, whether it was a complete absolute burnout in like the classical sense of like being incapable of working. But I think what most of us experience is more like a degree of creative burnout, whether it's like a day where your to-do list is like this long, but you're like, I literally can't get out of bed. I've definitely had those days. Or just like mini creative burnouts as well, like productivity burnout, but creative burnout as well, where you feel like, man, I used to love this, but now it's attached to so many stressors that it has kind of ruined the purity of the joy of what we so passionately used to do. I know I've definitely been there, so I wanted to take a look at why that is, and also some things that you can do to maybe circumnavigate that the next time you feel that coming up. And it definitely is a process of practice to sort of, catch your triggers and recognize the pattern at first, and then figure out ways that work for you individually to sort of try and avoid that. The biggest downfall to getting into that downward spiral of a creative burnout is that it really ruins what should be the nicest thing about for us choosing to do this, which is the joy in it, right? And if we lose that enthusiasm, if we lose the enjoyment of what we are doing, then A, what are we doing it for? And B, we all know that it's not going to be any good, right? And the energy with which we put ourselves into our art, because we're so personally linked to what we create, is really, really important. It's the essence of why what we do is good, right? Is because we're passionate about it. So how can we preserve that for ourselves? And I want to start us off with saying that creative burnout is not a sign of failure. Let me say that again. Creative burnout is not a sign of failure. Burnout and fatigue and stress is not a sign of failure. If anything, it's a sign that you are putting too much emphasis on something that is actually steering you away from your actual goal. Now, that might sound a little counterintuitive to a lot of people, but it really is true. So what I mean with that is that if you find yourself again and again running out of energy for certain things, the first thing that I would look at is, well, why does my focus keep going back to these things that very clearly are not actually fueling me? And why have I gotten myself stuck in this pattern of giving so much attention to these things in order to then again always have the same results, aka you being tired or you being fatigued or burned out by these things, right? So whether it is your day-to-day sort of operations, you open your email account and you immediately feel yourself getting stressed out or resentful towards it, whatever process it is, whether it's your outreach or it's social media for you, the thought of it alone is sort of overwhelming, but you sort of feel like, well, I should be doing this. Why can't I get myself to do this? Like, other people seem to do it so easily. These thoughts alone, and probably don't feel very good to you. And where attention goes, energy flows. So take a look at what area that might be for you, and you can share it in the chat for those of you that are in here live. I would love to know what it is for you. And take a look at Why am I convinced that so much of my attention needs to go to this area of my business? And what are my belief systems around that actually, like, what are the thoughts that I'm thinking around the subject that really don't actually feel good to me? And the best thing you can do with these things that really stress you out and that are like these like black energy sucking holes for you is to take your attention away from it. And I know now there's probably like these big loud voices in your head that are like, but I can't. Like, I literally can't, because otherwise what? Otherwise my business will crash and burn. Otherwise I'll never get to fulfill my dreams. I understand that mentality, but you will never be able to force the results that you want if you can't first energetically align yourself with how it'll feel if they are actually already fulfilled. And feeling bad is never the way of doing that. Feeling like you need to bulldoze yourself into functioning is the most counterproductive thing that you can do. So identify those like key factors within what you are doing in your career and figure out, why do I feel like I need to bulldoze myself into always getting myself into this same cycle of feeling attached to this one subject, and what can I do to sort of lighten the load here a little bit? And I know this is easier said than done, but there is something to be said about least resistance to something that is stealing you and robbing you of a lot of energy. If you can find a way for this one area in your business to not be all consuming to you energetically, ultimately I think it's very likely that you'll find a lot more ease and actually a lot more energy to then actually be able to go and deal with it. And I don't know how it is for you guys, but for me, those areas in my business were those areas that were the most like fear attached, like things like finances or things like emails. Like emails used to always be this thing where I was like, I can't let anything fall under the table, but I don't know if I'm doing it right, or opening my email account was always attached to like stress and this like negative expectations of turn down, where I felt like, well, if I'm not on top of these things, it's just going to get worse. For example, I used to have my email account on my phone where like every time an email would come in, I would get a notification. And whenever I would hear that ding on my phone, that's like a very specific sound to when it's an email versus like a text message, like I physically had a reaction to it, you guys, and it usually wasn't a good one, you know? So what I had to do was I had to turn off my notifications, and I had to say, okay, I know that this is like a very sensitive subject to me, so I need to take control over how much of my energy this gets to take up within my day-to-day, because we all know that like just our finances, just our accounting, just our email account is only a small part of the whole big picture, right? So how can I take back control over how this makes me feel, no matter what the result is that I'm witnessing? How can I tell myself, I love my emails again? Like, how can I get back into that headspace? And that's another thing with me. When I got into a really bad place of creative burnout, I had forgotten how much fun I used to have with photography. And when I was a little kid, you know, all of the things surrounding photography were exciting to me. Even the idea of building a photography business, even learning how to write down all of my business expenses that I could deduct from my taxes or whatever it was like, wow, that is so cool. But we forget that sometimes, right? We forget that used to feel like a privilege to us, because once we're in the depth of it, it's hard to sometimes see the silver lining beyond it, right? So perspective definitely always helps. But in order to regain that, you need to allow yourself to step away from it first and sort of untrigger it for yourself. And the assumption of least resistance to whatever it is that is burning you out is actually the smartest thing that you can do. So have you convinced yourself that whatever area is that is the stressor for you, there's only one way, and the one way is through? That mentality is what's burning you out. It's not the actual thing itself. It's your assumptions around how it has to function for you. And how can you step away from that just for a second? Like, I'm not saying don't ever look at your finances again. Don't ever deal with your accounting again, or whatever it is. Don't ever read your emails again, or unless you never get a rejection email ever again, you're never going to be able to change it. What I'm saying is that it's okay for you to deny the circumstances of your current reality in order to regain your strength, okay? And that is the hardest thing to do most of the time, you know? If there's one thing that you have fixated upon and you've sort of attached, like, everything you care about to this thing, that is like a belief that you've convinced yourself that that is how it must be, so that is how it will continue to be for you. So the best thing you can do is to remove that at first in order to be able to rejuvenate, and then figure out, okay, how can I start looking at this area in a different way that actually allows me to preserve my energy? Whether that's, okay, I'm going to pick one day of the week that I'm going to look at this thing. And for the other 6 days of the week, I'm allowing myself to not give it my energy. So what that looks like is not like, oh, God, Fridays is my accounting day, and like all week long I have a stomachache leading up to it because I'm already nervous about what I'm going to find in my bank account when I look at it on Fridays. It's more saying that, okay, this is a sensitive subject to me, but I know that I can handle it if I am able to sort of put parameters around how much I have to handle it in the beginning until your relationship to it can change, right? And then on top of that, I need to adapt this identity that I am allowed to not have to deal with my accounting or with my emails or whatever it is all the time, day in, day out, in order to be successful. Because that is where we're going wrong, right? We feel like we need to deal with the thing that is actually robbing us of all the energy to get all of the other stuff done in order to be successful. But if that's what you believe, that's how it's going to look for you. So, like, for example, if your belief is, like, I used to feel like I need to work at least the same hours that anybody in a 9-to-5 job is working in order for me to have a successful photography career. But we all know that photography doesn't work that way, especially if part of your success is dependent on being creative, being able to be spontaneous. So if I have the belief that I need to be sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours every single day, Monday through Friday, then that is what my reality is going to look like until I start believing that I can be as successful as a photographer as I want to be on 2 hours of work a day. If that is what I am, if that is the assumption that I am putting out there for my success, then that is how I will establish my business in order to function for me. But if I am making the assumption that I need to look at my emails the second that they come in order to be, because we're doing this for a reason, right? We're doing it because we have made this assumption that that is the only way that it'll work for us, or that is the only way that we can avoid failure, or that we can avoid going bankrupt, or that we can avoid whatever it is we're trying to avoid, right? Then that is where you're pumping your energy, you're giving your energy away the whole time, rather than allowing yourself to first focus on the things that can actually energetically charge you, and then finding a gentle way with yourself in order to deal with the things that are trickier for us. one way that really helped me to do that was to plan ahead and to have a clear structure of what expectations I am putting on myself. And I know we've done a video about outreach routines before. Outreach routines was one thing that like lightened the load for me a lot, where I felt like, okay, I have a plan of how many emails I want to be sending out per week, depending on like, okay, so and so many to a brand, so and so many about podcasts. I want to be sending out 3 invitations for my teaching seminars or whatever it is, and having a clear structure to it, so that when I did sit down, because like sitting in front of a computer for me was really hard, but I felt like I said, I needed to do it 8 hours every day, so I was burning myself out. Now I know that if I can sit down 2 hours in the morning on this day, that I am allowed to step away from it and feel like I have done the things that I need to do in order to feel like I can be successful with this. I hope that this is resonating with some of you guys. So take time off, take time to step away, but during that time that you are stepping away, you can't just do it in avoidance of the thing that you are afraid of, because then you're actually like charging it energetically more in a negative way. Stepping away attached to an identity that allows you to emotionally step away is the thing that you need in order to actually be able to recharge and have the energy to look at the things that are tricky for us. And we all have those areas in our business, right? So for me, in order to be able to step away, I needed to be like, okay, I can be as successful as I want to be on 2 hours of computer work every single day. If I don't adapt that belief, and if I can't create a vision in my head where that is true, like, is there photographers that barely spend time in front of their computer because they're busy running around doing amazing photo shoots? Yeah, so who says that that can't be my reality? But I need to sort of allow myself to recognize that I am keeping myself trapped in this downward spiral that is robbing me of all the energy that I have. Let me see. I see a comment here. Yes, one of the reasons I always wanted to do photography is because I hate desk jobs, and somehow I still think that if I don't do 9 to 5 with my laptop, that's really bad. Yeah, that's how I used to feel as well, and I used to forget that the reason why I wanted to do photography, because every time I got to do it, I felt so absolutely amazing, and I felt so full of energy and enthusiasm, and you know, it starts with recognizing that we've created a belief system around this that's keeping us trapped within that, right? By the way, I'm sitting on the floor today because I felt like this is such a heavy topic that I was like, because we're talking about, you know, the mentality of, oh, I need to do this and this, it needs to look this certain type of way. I was like, I don't need to be sitting at a desk for this. I can do this on the floor, you know, because this is sort of, you know, I just wanted to show that like I can liberate myself from the things that I believe they need to be a certain type of way and that actually keep me stuck in a certain type of pattern, right? So planning ahead is something that can help with that. At least for me, that was one of the things that, oh my God, because once I finally felt like, okay, I believe that the limited hours of routine that I have set up for myself are efficient, and part of my program is teaching people how to do that for themselves, where they actually have statistics to back up, okay, if I invest these 2 hours, I know that in the long run, this will be my turnaround of results that I am looking for. That sort of knowledge, game changer, because it really takes the guessing game out of it, takes the pressure out of feeling like, well, I can sit here for 8 hours and still feel like I should probably be doing more. That is the fastest way to burn out in the first place, right? Another really big burnout sort of catalyst is comparison, which I know most of us are guilty of. I'll admit that. I'll be the first to admit that, you know. Stop comparing yourself to others. We have chosen this because it falls outside of like a pre-dedicated structure of how careers and jobs should look like, right? Isn't that part of why we chose this? Because we crave freedom. The way to really enjoy freedom and spontaneity is structure, which are these routines that I just talked about. But the other way to sort of remind yourself that we are allowed to enjoy this, we are allowed to find a way to do this that actually energizes us, is to stop comparing yourself to others, because we all know there's no right or wrong way to become a successful photographer. I wish there was, because then I feel like, if it was the same as becoming a doctor, knowing, okay, I need to do so and so many years of uni, and then I need to shadow for so and so long and do this and this, and then, in 20 years down the road, I'll know exactly where I'll be. It would take the guessing game out of it. But the beautiful thing about it not being that way is that we get to make it whatever we want it to be. But we need to free ourselves from these pre-programmed ideas of how we think it should look in order to actually get there in the end. I always think some of the most successful photographers I know, they've probably walked a path that almost nobody walked, the same way. And that is why they're so successful, because they had to figure out a way that worked for them, because they are artists and because they need to be that unique. So if we want to be that unique and we want to have that type of career, we need to find the most unique way to make this work for ourselves. So don't feel like there is a right or wrong way for you to figure this out for yourself. The only right way for you to do this is to find a way that you can energetically thrive off of what you are doing. And I'm telling you, there is a way to do it. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but it starts with believing that it can be done for you, that you can find a way that this can be fun again, that you can get up in the morning and feel like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I am sitting down, I am doing my little tasks, and yes, self-discipline is part of that, but it shouldn't be 24/7, because if we're all we're doing is forcing productivity based off of self-discipline, which is something that we get shown everywhere we go of how it should work, we know that that is the last way to be creative, right? So stop believing that in the first place. And put a little bit of faith in the idea of maybe, only maybe, if I free myself from all of those expectations or all of the comparison to people around me of how I think I need to be doing it based on what I see other people doing it, that I will actually find the way that is so unique to who I am as an artist that you will start thriving off of that, and you will actually start seeing success that is uniquely created by you, because that is the only real way to be successful as an artist. Now, are there structures and routines to back that up, to give you a backbone, to feel like you know what you are doing, and to fuel new clients, and to, create your own visibility and go after and ask for what you want? Absolutely, and I teach that as well. But it starts with the belief that that can look however you choose for it to look for you in order to actually work for you. I hope that resonates with you guys a little bit. I'd love to hear from the people that are in here what your biggest takeaway from this is today. If any of this sparked a little bit of a hey, wait, maybe you're right. Maybe I should take a look at my assumptions about the way that I'm doing things. And feel free to write it in the chat here. But yeah, to sum it up, avoid conflict at all costs, avoid the stressor, remove the stressor, and at the same time, while stepping away from it, take a look at why you are fueling so much energy into the same thing that is continuously robbing you of energy, and how can you change that belief system about that thing. Take time off, at the same time plan ahead and have structure in order to be able to hold space for real freedom, real spontaneity, real time off. Because if you can't fully, be present within that time, then it doesn't matter how much time you have spend doing prep work on the computer, it'll never feel like it's enough. And lastly, stop comparing yourself to others. Stop believing that there is a certain type of way that this needs to be done, that you need to do things in order for you to be able to guarantee success, because that way you are just clutching onto something that was never meant to work in the first place within the structure that we have chosen for our own careers. Otherwise we would be in a 9-to-5, right? Anya says, yes, totally gave me a lot to think about, and coming up with a structure really think would help me with my business. And yes, stopping comparing yourselves to others, that's a big one. I love that feedback, absolutely. So I hope you guys take a little snippet away from this. We do these classes every single Friday, so if you have a colleague that you know struggles with some of these things as well, invite them to come in. It's free every single Friday. And if you are looking to have somebody to actually take you by the hand and walk you through this process to help you establish this routine so that you can have mental space, mental time for relaxation, to recharge, to be creative, hit me up. I do one-on-one coachings where I take a look at, okay, where are you actually? Where are like the burning points in your career that are sucking you off this energy, and how can we change that for you? I'm here to help you guys. That is what I want for you. I'm so happy that you guys come on here every single Friday, so thank you so much. And I will see you next week. Actually, no, I won't see you next week. Next week I am off. Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks then. Bye, guys.